Welcome to our Azure Incident Retrospective. I'm David Steele.
I'm Sami Kuba. We work in the Azure Communications team.
In addition to providing a written post-incident review after major outages, we also now host these retrospective conversations.
You're about to watch a recording of a live stream where we invited impacted customers through Azure Service Health to join our panel of experts in a live Q&A.
We had a conversation about reliability as a shared responsibility, so this includes our learnings at Microsoft, as well as guidance for customers and partners to be more resilient.
We hope you enjoy the conversation that follows.
Super. The incident we're going to talk about today was an update that was pushed out by Windows in January. And this was a security update that broke the Windows login prompt that some apps rely on. So customers that had updated and installed this update, and they used the Windows app to connect to their Azure Virtual Desktop or their Windows 365, they were stuck in an endless loop of prompts. Now, there was no data loss. There was nothing compromised. It was just a case of users being stuck in endless prompts and being unable to access the machine. And this persisted until we rolled back the settings or they made some changes here.
That's right. So it sounds like an impactful issue for customers. We'd love to have a conversation about it. I'd love to introduce a couple of engineering leaders joining us on our panel today. First up, we have Paul McDaniel. Paul is our principal software architect. Thanks for joining us, Paul. And to my right is Gustavo Catalano. Gustavo is our principal software engineering manager. And both Paul and Gustav are visiting from our Azure Virtual Desktop team. So thank you for joining us today. Paul, quick question for you. Why don't we start there?
Absolutely, Paul. I was fascinated. When I think about Azure Virtual Desktop or Windows 365, are these essentially the same product? If I look under the hood, are they the same thing? Do they behave in the same way when users connect to them? And all the ingredients, do they look the same? Are they different offerings? And how do they consume some of the updates that happen here?
Great question. They kind of surface as different products, so it's easy to get confused. But they share a lot of the same underpinnings. And so basically at the bottom layer, we have Azure Virtual Desktop, which has your remote desktop and your virtual session hosts. And then customers can use that in Azure Virtual Desktop to kind of manage their own VDI. Layered on top of that, we have a Microsoft offering of Windows 365, where it's more SaaS, right? So software as a service, where Microsoft will manage your VDI for you. But they're literally layered on top of each other like that. So AVD is kind of that core infrastructure that powers Windows 365 and very complementary.
And we've wrapped some goodness around it to make it more of a SaaS offering. I like that under the hood, it's using AVD.
Yeah, but you got it right. The Windows 365 part is the SaaS offering where Microsoft will take care of a lot of the things for you. Because they share that same VDI infrastructure, basically, you have a similar app, right? So Windows app is used to connect to both. You can use Windows app to connect to your Windows 365, Windows app to connect to your AVD. We have our older app, the MSRDC, which came up as part of this PIR, right? And MSRDC also could be used to connect to both. As part of unifying it, we're kind of moving everything to the unified Windows app. And so we saw that a little bit in this PIR.
All right, that's great to understand. And so that's kind of some of the underpinnings here. Now, what about updates usually, right? People are familiar with Windows Update. Can you help us to see it through the lens of AVD and Windows 365? How do updates usually work? And is it different for security updates versus just regular updates?
It is. And this always hits us too, right? It's kind of running the service. And so we have a service. And so you have Windows 365, and it has an update system it uses, where we roll out regular updates and maintenance, and we have systems to roll back and monitor. Underneath it, you've got Azure Virtual Desktop, where we've got regular safe deployments with monitoring and rollbacks. And then you have Windows, which hit us here, right, as well. And it's a whole separate beast, where it also has update systems with monitoring and rollbacks. And so Windows is what kind of is the interesting topic here. And so as everyone knows, it's got kind of a monthly release with its patch Tuesdays, right, where kind of big pieces come out. Generally, always actually, we use, we call it SDP, like a safe deployment.
Safe deployment, we've talked about it.
Yeah, perfect. Great. And so Windows has SDP. Security gets interesting here. And so basically when the security things come out, I don't know what's the right word, like embargo, like there's bad actors.
Yeah.
And you've heard of 0-day and things like this, right? And so when we're working on a security update, we're very careful to make sure we don't disclose what the threat is until we have a fix. And so on those patch Tuesdays, there's really no prep, right? No one gets to know ahead of time of what the disclosure of the threat is. And then when the fix comes out, it doesn't slow roll. Most patch Tuesdays slow roll. This one immediately turns on for everyone because you don't want some people to know, right? You want everyone to have the security fix.
That's bad. Gus, maybe I can bring you in here. So when we published this KB, this update, and Windows consumed it, and so most Windows didn't have a problem at all, but Azure Virtual Desktop did have a problem. And is it the way that they consume it? So as again, most people, they just automatically update these things, if I'm understanding it correctly. And Azure Virtual Desktop also automatically updates these things. But there was a discrepancy here in how Windows behaved.
There was. So like Paul mentioned, for security updates, they go out to everyone. We don't want some people to get it before others. And so what ended up happening here is it comes with a bunch of security updates, and we were particularly hardening credential UI. Credential UI is the credential UI that most people have seen since Windows 7. It's typically used for things like Kerberos, and that particular flow had an issue in this KB that we didn't see before. Most people didn't have an issue if they were using the Windows Account Manager, which is the WAM dialog. If you've opened up Teams recently, the authentication that has a web page there, that's kind of what that one looks like. And so it was tricky to catch this because you had to have a particular authentication flow set up, and then you would hit the issue if, for instance, you were using YubiKey or falling back to Kerberos, then you would hit the particular issue. And like Paul mentioned, we do have two apps. We have the Windows app, new and shiny, and we have MSRDC. One key difference between the two is MSRDC is deployed as an MSI, whereas the Windows app is deployed as an MSIX. If you're not familiar with MSIX package and technology, it runs in kind of like a sandbox environment, and that was the key difference here that made it break specifically for Windows app compared to MSRDC.
Got it. So customers, even if you were using Azure Virtual Desktop or Windows 365, if you were using it through the remote desktop client or through a web client, you didn't run into that issue. But if you were using the Windows app, because of the way that that's packaged, you got these credential problems.
Correct. The Windows app and a specific set of authentication protocols.
That one.
Right. That's where it gets interesting, because in the post-incident review, we kind of said, hey, you have to have, all three things had to be wrong at the same time. It had to be AVD or Windows 365, you had to be using the Windows app, and it had to prompt you for authentication. So can you just expand on that third one a little bit? Doesn't everyone get prompted for authentication?
No. So if you set up most modern authentication, like our most recent protocol, RDSA DAuth, most of the time people want single sign-on, right? They don't want to sit there and type their credentials over and over and over. And if you had single sign-on, it pops out the Windows Account Manager, and then you just don't even see a prompt if you're logged into the same. So if you log into Windows on your client machine as the same user, you don't even see that prompt. It's just SSO all the way through.
Got it. Microsoft IT must be good at this, because I don't get prompted for my password very often.
Correct. And that's actually one of the reasons that made it harder. Internally, we used the latest and greatest passwordless technologies. So internally, it was harder for us to hit this. We would have to go and set up a specific authentication environment that didn't have SSO enabled, and then it was more likely that we would hit it.
Got it. Okay. That's good.
Paul, if I can bring you in. So we've sent out this update. Millions, billions of Windows machines are working fine. AVD has an issue. And so what do we do with this update? We decided then we don't want to roll back stuff, because as you said, there's bad actors out there and there's an issue. But we introduced this new KIR thing. Could you tell us what this is and why we decided to do what we did instead of rolling back the entire KB altogether?
Great question. And things like this are always tricky, like you're pointing out, sensitive to do. And so in this case, we had early signal that it was coming, and we kind of had early signal to know what it was, like the sensitive security nature. And so we kind of scrambled all of Microsoft, kind of our cousins through other teams, and got them all together in a war room, right? And because of the nature of security, we never tell people, we give them the information for them to make their own decisions. So we never told anyone, don't install that KB, don't take the update, but we immediately issued comms saying, there is an issue in this update. So people knew, and they could make their own decision. And then we went and kind of, okay, we got to find out a way for the folks that took the update to selectively roll back. So that's what a KIR, what's a KIR, right? And so it's a known issue rollback, and the KIR will let a customer choose that they want to selectively roll one thing back.
Okay.
Not the whole package, not the whole update, but one thing back. And so in that case, this is what we did. We did a KIR. God, I think the incident happened on Tuesday, right? Patch Tuesday. And so early Wednesday morning, very early, we were working all night. We had the KIRs ready, and so that's when customers got the ability to, KIRs are basically an install package, and it's targeted specifically for your operating system. So it's a little bit, particular. You have to know which OS you have, which flavor of OS you have, and you install that particular thing for your OS. Once it's installed, it enables you to have some new group policy that you can turn on and off that thing.
Cool. So that's not just guidance, here's what you should do, it's also things to download and group policy commands to run. You have to do something.
Yeah.
Okay, but we provided that guidance up front and we said, FYI, here's what's happening, but it wasn't all smooth sailing after that point, right?
There's nothing automated.
Right, but while we were publishing that guidance across all of our different channels and trying to share which are the right known issue rollbacks, there was some comms hiccups here, right? And so we shared, was it the wrong instructions or the wrong broken links? And that just went to some AVD customers who were consuming those updates in the portal. So if you were a customer and you're reading these updates through the portal, we sent you the wrong guidance or we sent you the wrong links. Can you help us understand?
Oh, man, and we were horrified, right? Like I said, we're working all night Tuesday. We realized the magnitude of this thing. And so I think it was 4 a.m. Wednesday morning. And so what we did, because of the severity of it, is we weren't exactly sure late Tuesday night which of the 2 fixes we needed to roll back. And it takes a long time to make a KAR, right? Like we have to build them for each OS, and I think we built a dozen different flavors. And so proactively, we built 2, because we weren't sure which one it was. Around 3 or 4 a.m., we figured out which exact one we needed. But you already see the recipe for disaster. We had 2 we built. Right. And it's 4 a.m. And so another fun part of all the layers we talked about, right, is we actually have 3 ways to do comms. Windows 365 does comms through the Microsoft Admin Center. AVD does comms through the Azure portal. Windows does comms through its Windows Health messaging. And so you have 3 different spots, and you have to coordinate it all quite right, and we just kind of fumbled. I think Windows, if I recall, Windows Health had all the right links, and I think it was the Azure portal and the Mac that just on a couple links fumbled to the wrong piece. Customers asked us what was happening. Nothing was wrong or bad or that sort of thing. Like if you applied the wrong link, you were turning off one of the pieces, which was okay. It was okay. It just didn't mitigate your issue.
Got it.
Think about noon on Wednesday, so maybe roughly 5 hours later, and we went a little bit slower because we wanted to painstakingly check every single link. We did something Wednesday morning. I think we immediately issued comms saying, heads up, there's something wrong with the links, give us some time. So we let people know. And then around noon, we did some comms saying, all the links are good now.
Got it. I was on call that day. I remember it. I remember us talking through this. So 6 hours later, and we got the corrected ones out. Okay, that's great to understand. So that was kind of just the temporary fix for the known issue rollback.
Great call. It's just turning off that security fix. And even customers had questions about that. Is it safe to turn off this? Yeah. It was a temporary mitigation.
Right.
And this was important to do because that KB contains tons of other security fixes, right? We only want to turn off this one specific one.
Correct. Which is why we never roll back KBs, and we just adapt them we modify them as the situation changes. Correct. But then we spoke about multiple mitigations, and we released an out-of-band update, I think on the 17th, and then later on we released it in a new KB, or there was a full update so that customers didn't have to do the selective surgical, looking at all the 3 factors that line up. Could you walk us through what happened there for a more durable mitigation?
Correct. So as Paul said, we did the KIR first. It was very difficult for customers to deploy that. Then once we got signaled that it was working well for customers, we decided to then do an out-of-band update. They still have to go to the Windows Update Catalog, download the right KB. In particular, there was pain around unmanaged devices and applying it this way. We got
unmanaged devices.
Unmanaged devices.
Because if you've got managed devices, out-of-band updates are easy. People can tick a box.
Yes.
But for unmanaged customers, you need to do them across 1,000 different bring your own devices. That was a bit of a pain.
But we got feedback too, like even for managed devices, an out-of-band catalog update is difficult.
Okay.
Yes.
So, and we heard the feedback.
And then
keep going.
Once we got further confirmation that, yes, people that are able to apply the out-of-band update are successful, then in the next Windows Update, the week later, then we did an optional update through Windows Update. So now you don't have to go to a website, figure out which KB it is. Right. You can just go to your regular settings app on Windows, go to Windows Update, seek the optional one and get it. And then the week after that, on Patch Tuesday on February, then it was fully automatic. You didn't have to do anything.
Got it. So those were basically the same fix. It was more just about how we get those bits out to all the right folks. Right. Cool. That's great to understand. Okay, so we had this hiccup. We were temporary fix. We've now applied the permanent fix that's gone out. Paul, maybe this is a good chance for us to pivot over to talk about our learnings and repairs from this, right? Sounds like we've got several. And the big one that stood out, or the first one that we mentioned in the post-incident review was, hey, we want to onboard this scenario or things like it to our fancy AI-based automated incident detection system. That's so that we can react more quickly, tell customers more quickly. What does that look like?
Correct. This one, you always have hits and pros and cons. We actually So the way we work through things is detection, right? Time to detection and then time to mitigation, and we measure ourselves off all these great things. We detected this one pretty early. So I want to say around 2 or 3 in the afternoon, Tuesday, we knew something was up.
Okay.
But we didn't quite know the blast radius or the impact, and so we spent some time, we were engaged immediately. It wasn't until about 6 p.m. when I think Asia was, the time zones work here, sometimes in your favor, sometimes against your favor. At that point, we realized it was much more severe. And so, we have our severities. And so we increased the severity. And then later Tuesday, we increased the severity all the way up. And so this new AI system we're talking about will help us assess the impact.
Okay.
Like how fast we should we escalate the severity quicker?
Okay.
And so we're on track to that. We're onboarding into this system. We've got a fancy, I think it's called Brain.
Yeah,
Brain. Right? Brain inside Azure is a fancy AI system that helps us.
Yeah. Now, some scenarios we onboard to Brain just to help us detect and for us to know. There are scenarios that we can onboard to Brain that will automatically notify customers. Do you know if we're going to be able to do automatic communications, or is that a step too far?
I'll check into that one. I like that one.
Great.
I don't know.
But at least we'll know about it more
We'll
quickly,
know for
and
sure.
We'll hit the big red
And maybe we'll be able to let customers know. Yeah.
Great. That's helpful.
Super. Maybe Gus, we're partnering with the Windows team to catch these kind of failure modes early. I understand when KBs go out, you're always going to get a little bit, some pauses here and there depending on scenarios. But we're trying to catch this. One of the things that we use in Microsoft, we call it dog fooding. We eat our own kind of food and just see how it goes. Were we not already dog fooding things like KBs on our AVDs and using them? Or
We work dog fooding them. Like I mentioned earlier, Microsoft employs the latest and greatest security authentication protocols, and that's what bit us here, is we needed to have more variety in how we have that set up. We need to deploy different tenants with different configurations, so we're making sure that we're testing all the different configurations customers have. We currently do that to a certain extent, but we're primarily focused on the server side of Windows. Historically, that's where the regressions come from the most, and now we're expanding our test cases, making sure that we cover every single authentication protocol that we have, including the older ones that obviously use passwords because we want people to move to a passwordless world.
sounds like a lot of permutations and combinations of,
So many
there are so
combinations.
many. It's a lot it's a big test ground to cover.
It's okay. We have to. We'll do it. We'll do it. But you're right. That's the complexity.
Yeah.
So that's for testing to be aware of it and to prevent the problem in the first place. What about when it comes to communications? Because I was also reading in the post-incident review, we said we want to be able to send comms directly to the Windows app. And when I was thinking about that, wait, don't we, most of our communications go to administrators that kind of lord over these VDI infrastructure. Is it helpful to be able to tell the users in the Windows app as well?
Yeah, so one of the things that we noticed and we wish we had done sooner was we put out that out-of-band update and KIR with specific instructions, and users were just getting this cryptic error. They would have to go and call their IT admin, try to read the error code to them. IT admin would have to go and look it up. We wish that we had been able to provide the user a more clear, concise message on what steps they needed to do.
Right.
Maybe
This is us. This is us, not you. We're aware of this. Something
Yes,
like.
yes.
Okay.
And hopefully then be able to communicate that faster. Because we hadn't really done that before, so it took us a while to kind of like figure things out. And thinking about it retroactively, we should have done that like day one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm familiar with the error messages with the very long code, which we're trying to help.
-21734.
It's very, it's tough to look up. Paul, was there anything customers could have done? I mean, if customers are using AVD or Windows 365 and they're in this kind of thing, I understand now that what I seem to hear, it's always good to consume the latest updates, like that, have that box checked. That makes sense. It's always good if there is an issue that you can use these KIRs, these known issue rollbacks. But is there anything customers could have done to work around it? If they run into these types of issues again, are there other forms of getting in there, or are they just we have to wait until they have to wait until we mitigate?
Things like this are tricky. Often there are things you can do, like get onto canary builds or pre-test. These ones are trickier. Gus mentioned, right? There are things they can do if they can move to more modern authentication protocols. If they can adopt SSO, those are great things. We're encouraging everyone to be passwordless, just in general. I'm not sure what else. There was one more learning, right, or remediation for next time. We mentioned a little bit about managed and unmanaged, right? Like, what does that mean? In our world, it's different in VDI because you've got your session host, right? Like where your remote computer is, but then you have your client. And so you have two machines in play here. And your remote computer is generally IT managed, right? People love that. And then You have your customer or your employee, your user, right, who's kind of bringing their own device. Maybe it's their laptop at home. Maybe they're in a coffee shop. Maybe they're somewhere else. Maybe they're on their phone. It's the beauty of remote desktop. So those devices tend to be BYO, bring your own, and unmanaged. And that's the pickle we got into, is that, like Gus said, we're very good at managing the servers, the session hosts, but the unmanaged is just on their own. And so when we did this originally with the out-of-band catalog, we got the feedback pretty loud. The out-of-band catalog was almost impossible to apply to an unmanaged device.
Okay.
The user had to know which machine, a very particular version of Windows they had to download a package, they had to run scripts that were complex to run. And at that time, we didn't have just a playbook ready to go for these unmanaged machines. And so that's another learning we have now, is we have a new playbook in this case where we know we have the issue with the unmanaged machines. And you saw we kind of used the playbook. That was the 2 releases. We did the out of band on the Saturday.
Yeah.
And I think it was the following Saturday, following Tuesday, where we used this new playbook and used Woo to push everything out to the unmanaged devices. So if something happens again, we'll have a much faster way. It won't take 2 weeks. To get a mitigation.
That's cool to see how we can react to it more quickly, and we can kind of, that's a good learning on our side. As far, and good learning for customers to take those as quickly as possible. Gus, one last point, that since we touched on it earlier, in terms of customers trying to avoid getting into this position in the first place, we mentioned in the PIR things like single sign-on or this RDS AAD auth. This is, I joked, the reason why I don't get asked my password very often. Is that just a good best practice for customers to move towards? Does that avoid this kind of thing? Are there trade-offs for customers to consider?
In general, using the more modern authentication protocols we've learned from just the history of being attacked over and over and over, the modern authentication protocols are phish resistant. Even if the credential gets stolen, it's time bound, so you have to ask another one. You can apply things like conditional access policies. They're just more secure in a bunch of different ways, and it's what more customers are using more and more and more, and more modern. Like in general, we will build new features and stabilize it more and more, and in general, it's what we recommend for customers to apply.
Cool. Okay, that's great to understand. So we've already talked about some learnings from the Azure Virtual Desktop part. Maybe customers have some learnings on how they run their authentication. I've saved my last question for my co-host, Sammy, since Sammy runs our incident communications team. How did we do on comms? Paul's already talked through some of the broken links and the hiccups, but any other reflections on our communications?
If I reflect on it, I think it was tricky for a lot of places. Number one, as Paul mentioned, comms are in 3 different places, and you've got Windows and the KB and the stuff talking there about known issue rollback. You've got the Windows Center, Microsoft Admin Center, and then you've got the Azure portal as well. If you live in all of those ecosystems, it's really tricky to manage. Typically speaking, in Azure, when we have issues, it's usually because Azure made a change, and so our detection, our monitoring is all around the Azure piece. When Windows makes an update, and actually Windows is fine for the most part, but Windows interacting with Azure, which is a very unique scenario, we don't really see it at all happen. It took us a while to scramble. Now, we did get comms out reasonably quickly, but again, we're scrambling for information, and to sit down and try and, in the fog of war, articulate these 3 unique situations had to be lined up. It's not just, you couldn't log in, you had to be using CredUI, plus this one, plus this one. And so I think it was really hard. This is why when we sent out communications, it was unclear. We're not used to communicating things that are not part of Azure, but part of a kind of the fringe of our ecosystem. I'm really excited about things like AIOps coming in. Most of our outages are communicated by Brain automatically today, which is amazing, like in the high 70%, maybe 80%, where we communicate within 15 minutes of impact. So once we have those SLIs in place and we're able to communicate quickly, we communicate to the portal for the most part, which is where customers should be consuming our communications. But when I look back on the PIR, after the dust settles, it's much easier to kind of reflect and say, okay, this is what happened. We need to always try and get better at during, and especially about providing that nuanced information, which can make a huge difference in the outage. But yeah, those would be some of my thoughts on it.
Great, thank you for our reflections. Hey, thank you both for joining us today. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Gustavo. I really appreciate you kind of joining these sessions. Ultimately, we run these sessions to try to rebuild trust after major outages. We know how impactful these outages can be for our customers, and so we just want to show up and be available and talk through how we're always learning and improving from this.
Thank you for watching this Azure Incident Retrospective. At the scale of which our cloud operates at, incidents are inevitable.
Just as Microsoft is always learning and improving, we hope our customers and partners can learn from these too, and provide a lot of reliability guidance through the Azure well-architected framework.
To ensure that you get posted incident reviews after an outage and invites to join these live stream Q&A sessions, please ensure that you have Azure Service Health Alerts set up.
We really focused on being as transparent as possible and showing up and being accountable after these major incidents.
Whether it's an outage, a security, or a privacy event, Microsoft is investing heavily in these events to ensure that we earn, maintain, and at times rebuild your trust. Thanks for joining us.